Yeah, dude, I'm digging the backdrop. This is the most professional backdrop I've ever had in one of my in one of my in one of my podcasts. This is amazing. I
Yeah, I was like, well, I could sit over here on this stool and have a backdrop of a bunch of pipes in my basement and like a bunch of random stuff, but I'm like, ah, I've got a nice comfy spot over here. I got some yoga mats I'm sitting on and pillows, and yeah, got this nice,
yeah.
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
you seem like a yoga mat and pillow kind of guy. Seem probably
I mean, it's
like
no joke. Like, look at this. You got a nice pillow just perched
That's
up on it.
I'm just waiting for the goat yoga to start, right?
Yeah.
That'd be good. You could probably make some pretty good side money with some goat yoga. I mean, that's big in California. We could maybe bring that to Central Tennessee. That'd be good.
I seriously probably got a better. I've got a bunch of goats, but I've probably got a better chance at like chicken yoga.
What kind of yoga?
Chicken.
Chicken? Yeah. Yeah,
Like
as long as you're not
you just
fighting
go
them.
in a certain little area. We've got like five chickens that that Ella loves like so much. She carries them around the yard. Not every time somebody comes over, she's carrying them around to show them to her, and like they're just pets. Like it's craziest thing ever. Like literally, she just wallers them all over the place.
It's funny how chickens kind of go like one of two ways. It's like you either have the chickens, in my experience, unlimited experience. We've only had chickens a few years and then we moved on, but it was like you had the chickens that were like super like friendly, just like pets, like you're saying, like meet you at the car, what's up? And then you have like this super aggressive rooster, right? That's
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, this rooster is trying to kill me.
Yep.
So that's my experience. You've had one or the other, right? We've had some
We
pretty aggressive
we got to the
roosters.
point where we don't keep a rooster anymore because of that, and we don't really want any more chickens anyway. So if we do, we always end up buying more at Tractor Supply anyway. So it's like I don't need
Well,
a
yeah,
bunch of fertile eggs sitting in the pen, and then like lo and behold, here comes a bunch of baby chicks because I missed a few or something.
well, that's the problem with Tractor Supply. It's like you get a dozen chicks and you think, oh, and then all of a sudden half of them are roosters, right? So
Yep. Yep.
yeah, all right. Well, so you're only a hobby farmer, but you're actually a dirt bike racer.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd rather be a hobby dirt bike racer than an actual farmer, but as it is right now, you're a dirt bike racer. So let's rewind a minute because I don't know this story from you. I kind of know this story through your dad, but like walk me through like like your background, when you started riding and racing and going to the GNCCs and all that stuff.
Started riding. I don't know, probably around four, three and a half, three, around 4 year old or so, and it was like the JR 50, spray painted black. It was legit, and then kind of just did like I think Dad took me to a lot of local like flat tracks and for several years like flat tracks, some local motocross, did a little bit of everything really, and fast forward. First off road race I raced wasn't until I was on like actually like an 85. So, and I remember the first race it wasn't too far from my house. It's pretty close to actually the old Gray. Actually, it wasn't terribly far from there. But yeah, and then we did GNCC. Started the GNCC series in 2005. So done a few races that year in back then. I think it was called Big Wheel 1415. I think that was the class, but that was like the YXC1 now. I think so. I did a couple races then, and then the next year was like we chased the whole series in 2006, and I haven't left the series since then.
I mean, you realize that's almost 20 years ago.
I don't. It doesn't even make sense to be honest. Yeah. When you say it like that, it's like bad.
Yeah.
What have I
Well,
done?
yeah, like, oh man. So when you were a kid, like, were you just kind of going there and like riding, or like were you kind of looking at the pros and going like, oh man, like I want to be those guys someday?
I mean, that was always the dream of any kid, and back before social media and all this, stuff, it was you were way more into it. Like you wanted to be it more. I feel like it's like because you didn't have a connection with the pros. Like it was like, oh, there's Juha Salmon, there's David Knott. Like I got their poster. This is the coolest thing ever. Like, uh, and I mean, I always like, yeah, it'd be cool to be pro, but never really, never really like was chasing it at that time and or anything like that. It was just we were just doing it for fun and seeing how far we could take it. And I think from our parents' outlook, it was, hey, whatever we can do, keep him out of trouble and keep us, stuff like that. That's what we did. We rode motorcycles.
Did the whole family go, like your sisters and all that go, or is it just you and your parents?
No, my sister. I got two older sisters. They're both 4 years and 4 years. So oldest sister's 8 years older than me. So I mean, we were pretty spread apart. So I mean, they it was kind of more. We just kind of did it. I guess I was the baby and I got lucky. That's what everybody. That's what my parents. You were one of the other two. We wouldn't have been doing this. So.
I got you. I got you. So you went, but there was obviously a point though when you or your dad or somebody realized like, oh, like Jordan's not so bad at this. Like, you start chasing titles and moving up the categories and all that kind of stuff. So like you referenced what is now like YXC1, but then you would have moved into like I assume kind of what is like today like 250A for example, right? Like top
Yeah.
amateur
So
category.
I finished second that year, the first full year of the YXC1 to Corey Buttrick, and then we went from that to I did 1 year of 250B, and we won that one. And then, like I said, it was just all fun. So it was just like, we're going to race, we're gonna go try to win a race, whatever, every weekend. So, and then we went to that was when XC2 had just started, sometime around that point. So 250A kind of went to that XC2. Everybody there went there, and I rode Open A or 250A 1 year, and then done a couple years, 2 years of Open A actually. So won all of those, every amateur championship that I raced, I won every season of it. So kind of
Nice.
just crawled up through the ranks, and it was probably the years of Open A. I had a uh, Monster Energy Kawasaki amateur deal, and it was really good. And I think that was the point when I was like at 2 points. Like I wanted to be a kid, I wanted to live my life and have fun, but I wanted to try to take this and see if I could actually make it pro. Like kind of see which way I could go. So that was pretty hard time decisions in my life. It's like, do I really want to do this? Is it worth it? Am I gonna? I don't know. Just give it a go and we'll see what happens, kind of deal. So
So how old would you have been in those open A going into XC2? How old would you have been?
yes, 18, 19, 20 range.
Still a long time ago.
Yeah. Oh no, it's been yeah, for me. It's been a long time.
I gotcha. And so when you did that, like, so now it's pretty commonplace. It's pretty, people go away to train, right? Like you're from, I don't think we've said this, but you're from Central Tennessee. Would you consider yourself Central Tennessee? Did I say that right? I consider you Central Tennessee.
I would. I mean, Nashville Central. I'm kind of. I always tell everyone who asks me, I'm like, where Nashville and Knoxville is? I'm in between the two of those. So if you ever drive across Tennessee, which like it's forever, but like if you ever go to Nashville, or Nashville East or whatever, you start getting in the hills, the bigger hills, and like that's where I live. Like not in the flats, but in the hills in the middle of that, and all of them.
Yeah.
I guess you could say
I
Central
mean,
Tennessee.
I'm from West Virginia. I've ridden my gravel bike around where you live, and I would call it very hilly. So you're from hilly Tennessee. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, the past few years, you've gone to Florida in the winter and trained, and at least as I've known you, right? Since I've known you for the past few years, you've gone to Florida. You've gone to Florida before I've known you. But at what point did you? Is that the point where you said, "Oh man, like I need to go out for the winter and train"? When you started taking it more seriously, or was that like kind of down the road, like you were seeing what other people were doing, and you're like, oh, I better go do that.
I would say it was down the road because earlier in my pro career, I rode for Yamaha, and uh, at that point, it was kind of we stayed in South Carolina at that time for a couple for kind of the same as guys do in Florida now, which there were just maybe one or two guys going to Florida at that time. Like it wasn't really a thing. Like there was a handful maybe at times, but not staying for the amount of time that people are there now. Uh, but it's I would say I started going to actual Florida probably 5 years into my XC1
Oh wow.
career.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just and that wasn't like any kind of structured training. That was just being able to ride sand and warmth and be in a good place and
Yeah.
yeah. It wasn't super serious. I wasn't super serious or nothing. I was just down there having a good time and riding dirt bikes and trying to get
Yeah.
better.
I think the thing that Florida affords you though is like the consistency. I mean, if you think about when we were down there this winter, I don't think we had to change a single day just because the weather was so predictable. It's so good. Versus
Yeah.
like where you and I live, it's like, oh, you might get a couple good days and there's you're mudded out or rained out or whatever. So I got you. Um,
Yeah, the sand is good. I mean, it doesn't matter how much it rains. I mean, there's some places you may not want to blow out that you ride, but overall, you can always go somewhere or you can do some sort of training that day to make up for, or not make up, but just fill in for what you were going
sure,
to do.
sure. So we've established that you've been around for a while, and some would call that age, some would call that being old. I'm just saying you're experienced, right? So, but we've seen this long runway of a career, and we've even referenced that the categories have changed, the naming of the categories have changed, and I think with that, just I think the sport has grown. Nowadays you have e-bikes. We reference people going to Florida to train, to do camps. Like there seems like there's deeper support in the amateur ranks, so on and so forth. Like when you sit here at this stage in your career as an elder statesman, and you look kind of you kind of survey the say of the sport, what are some things that you think have really changed since you started? Not necessarily started in like because you're just a kid, but like since you started getting serious and those open A, and then to your XC2, then to XC1, like what has really like changed within the sport?
Um, just the structure of the whole. You can take like any guys now, and nobody used to know how to train. That wasn't a thing. You just did what you thought you needed to do, and you went racing the weekend. You seen how it was, and you tried to better that for the next time. You may be doing something totally different all year. And now everyone knows exactly what to do. It's not very hard, to get it connected or figure out, kind of more so what you need to do, just because there's so much information out there now. Like you can go search in Google, YouTube, get connected with someone and really figure things out. But it's really elevated the sport to a level to where we're all everyone has to go to Florida. Everyone has to you have to put that time in preseason and so on to for your results to be where they need to be. You know, for what expectations you have. Depending on your expectations, you're going to get what you get out of it.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's time to up the ante. And it's like people keep going south. Maybe we need to go even further south, like Cuba, South America, or something, and really up the ante, right? Because I mean, I've only been around maybe 5 or 6 years, and I mean, that's something I've definitely noticed is like I think when I first started going to Florida with like you pros, I never really saw too many amateurs down there. And now you see more and more amateurs there. Maybe that's just because I'm more aware of what's going on, but I agree with you. There's a lot of need for the preseason boot camp, if you want to call it that. So, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just think it's busy all year, and it's almost like at this point you get the summer a little bit of a few weeks off during after snowshoe, and then you're back in preparation to try to do it all again. For the finale of the year, the last four or whatever. So it's kind of like you got 2 points for of the year where you got like really, you can really make hard weeks or month or whatever, month and a half of training trying to build up to
Yeah,
that.
it's funny. I took Bear, my kid, for a mountain bike ride with one of my buddies and his kid today, and I was trying to explain the season and how there's that like 2 month gap in the middle. I think it's probably the only season in the world where you have 70%, 80% of the season, and then a 2 month break, and then like you said, the
Yeah.
finale. I think last year was only 3 races last year, and I think this year is four, but that definitely makes it a little bit difficult. So like, how do you stay engaged? Because your all season is almost it's almost 365 days a year. There's almost like from the last race to the first race, that gap is almost the same as from the like snowshoe, which starts the summer break, to the first race back. So you basically have to stay on point for 365 days a year, and that's pretty unique. There's not, to my knowledge, there's not another sport that has a calendar like that, right? So how do you stay engaged, and at the same time, how do you find time to just mentally like decompress and like step away from it to stay fresh?
Yeah, there's definitely times, especially in my career where I've been so old, so long, around so long, whatever you want to call it. It's like you're right. Like to try to keep it fun for that amount of time, it's impossible. So there's times when you don't want to touch anything, you don't want to see anything, and that sometimes that's mid season, sometimes it's that off season, and like say like when you put it, I've never actually thought about it like what you just said, but like it really is about the same distance from the end of the season to the end of February when we're racing starting the first round again.
Mhm.
So it's like that's the time of year you feel like you should have like 4 months
Right.
off. You feel like you do have 4 months off, and then it's like you have so many. You have Thanksgiving, and then you have Christmas and New Year's, and then it's like we're racing in like 6 weeks.
Yeah,
What
yeah. I
just
mean, especially if you're on the enduros.
like it doesn't
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. The summer break feels
yeah,
forever, like the 2 months in the summer. So
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's that's
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, I think the thing that you and I have kind of gone back and forth about, and that we have established is like, you know, the best way to be good for around 3, 4, 5 is to make it to around 3, 4, 5, right? To not
Yeah.
physically or mentally burn out before you get to that point. And that sounds ridiculous to say, like, hey man, the first objective is to get to round three. But what you guys do is incredibly dangerous and takes a lot of focus. Like you can't fake a moto day. Like it just doesn't happen. Whereas you can fake a bicycle ride, you can kind of fake your way through a gym session. Um, but there's a pretty significant tax involved with getting effective training in. So anyway, I think one of the things that you and I've always kind of landed on is like, don't force the issue, right? And
Mhm.
I think you do a good job of like knowing when the tank is full and knowing when the tank is empty, and when the tank's empty, just organically letting it fill back up, right? And
Yeah.
so I think one of the things that you've done, I'll let you elaborate on this, but you're one wheel riding. I think I'm a little worried that maybe you're going to just put this whole dirt bike riding aside and focus more on the one wheel riding. But I see all that as a joke, but also I think it's a very important thing because what I see happening out of it is like, so I see all these things about attacks and how you got to be on point. That is a very significant wear and tear on your adrenal system, which controls everything that you do, right? Like if you're just smoked adrenally, whether that's like life or training or whatever it is, like smoked is smoked, right? And so what I've been noticing watching the frequency in which I get Facebook Marketplace one wheel listings from you and videos of one wheel riding from you, I've noticed like you do your work, but then you're out here having fun, right? And so I kind of want you to speak to
Yeah.
that a little bit as kind of maybe an elder statesman, or like it does seem like you are enjoying the sport and enjoying the process of. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, I mean, it's not. This isn't a job where you clock in and you do your work. Like it's not for. Not many people can do it, to be honest, just because you have to be so self-disciplined to do things you're on your own, and to be able to go do your job, go do your workout, go do your ride, whatever, and sometimes it's hard to check that off the list for the day or whatever, but once it's checked off, it's like, well, now I got free time, so what am I gonna do? It's like, so let's go rip the one wheel, and I've got to the point where anytime, like, I live about 30 minutes from Cookeville, which is kind of the bigger city, so anytime I like need to make a trip there, which I don't go there very often, but it's like anytime I drive that way, my one wheel's in the back of my truck. Like, hey, you never know when you're going to get the opportunity to go for a rip somewhere you haven't been.
Yeah.
And I treat everything like that, whether it's on my one wheel, on my dual sport, on my bicycle, on my gravel bike, on my dirt bike. I mean, if I can get on it, ride it, I want to jet skis, stand ups. Like, if I can get on something and ride it, something with a motor, somewhere where it's not designed to go,
That's the key
that's what
right there, where it's not designed to
that's
go.
exactly the key. It's like where it's not designed to go.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I get it.
That's what I don't know. That's fun to me.
Yeah.
So
No, I think a couple.
it's finding it's that I think that's it. It's finding things like whenever I went to Florida this year, and I rode one a few years ago at one wheel, but everyone had them in Florida. You guys had them. I rode yours. Probably put 40 miles on yours down there, but like it was a whole new challenge to me because it's like something I wasn't good at that I wanted to get better at. And that's what I chased my whole career on dirt bikes, trying to get to the top was the same thing. You're chasing that, try to get better, try to get better, try to get better. And yeah, that's fun. That's what keeps it fun to me, and that's what I enjoy doing. That.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also speaks to, like, I don't think that you would necessarily look at yourself and say I'm a creative person. I don't know if you label yourself that way, but I would label you that way simply because when you look at a dirt bike track, you have to be very creative in putting it all together. Like when you and I go pedal,
Yeah,
like Saturday and we're looking at the track, you're looking at these lines and people look at a line as like, oh, how to get through this turn. Well, you look at lines and like how you're linking the whole track together, right? You're very creative in that
yeah,
process. And I look at the things that you do off the bike is an extension of that creativity. And I think that fuels you. So I bring that back around is just that whole aspect of like balancing and decompression. It's like if you can have, yeah, you're referencing the motor and going out and having fun, but all those things really tie into that creative realm. Like you're not getting on a jet ski and just going in a straight line. You've probably never gone in a straight line in your entire life, right? Like that's probably never happened. Or you could probably ask your mom, Mom, when I was in diapers and took off crawling, did I ever go straight? And she'd be like, Jordan, you never went in a straight line, right? But it really references like that whole idea of being creative, having fun, decompressing, and just kind of enjoying what you're doing and sort of balancing out that whole stress component, right? So it's been fun to watch all you guys on these one wheels because like maybe I can in the comments or something I can post some links to the videos of the trials course that you guys had set up for the one wheels because I don't think Billy Bolt would even attempt some of the stuff you guys are doing on those one wheels. So, but yeah, maybe this can pivot into a whole
yeah,
one wheel sponsorship for you for 2025.
yeah. I don't know, maybe that'd be something else. I know the high end ones are way out of my price
Yeah,
range.
dreaming.
I'm a marketplace
Yeah,
shopper.
for sure, for sure. So let me ask you a couple questions there about um, so we're kind of talking a little bit about like just life balance, keeping things in perspective. Um, but you still have bad days, right? The last, I don't want to bring it up, but the last race wasn't the most amazing day ever, right? Um, and a lot of that stuff is just racing can is sometimes it's in your control, sometimes it's out of your control. But at the end of the day, like it's still at your feet. You're still the rider. You're still responsible. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with bad days?
I don't know. honestly, it's like you get in the moment during a race, whatever day that day, that evening, you get really frustrated, mad, whatever. But you have the quicker you can put it behind you and start on, like that's I mean that's what you have to do. I mean, you the more you know dwell upon it, whatever, figure it out, feel sorry for yourself, whatever the fact, whatever the weekend gave you, whether you crashed out, you broke something, you tore it up, like you know, you just got to kind of you got to roll on with it. I mean, that's just part of the process, and you know, if we're walking home, then that ain't a bad day. You know, that's the way I look at things.
Could always be worse, right? Yeah.
It could, yeah, for sure. You know, and it is what it is. I mean, sure, it's a long but short season spread out. But I mean, there's still only 13 races, 3 hours per race. You know, I mean, you do the math. Like, there's a lot of things that can happen, and for everything to go right, everything's against you,
Sure.
no matter what. When I mean, from the course to you, just outside of your own preparation and your own bike and your own body, you have all the other riders, all the other factors of the tracks, different tracks, muddy tracks, dusty. I mean, anything can happen at any given time, and you know, where you have seasons and years where you have nothing happen, it's like you really got to think like it take all those things that for all the things that went right to make that happen,
Sure.
you know, and it's just yeah, it's pretty. There's a lot goes on in
Yeah.
that.
And there's a lot that goes on for you. And then there's also the realization and the respect that guys are good. Like your competition is stiff. So yeah, it's a lot to sort through. It's a lot to figure out. And I agree. Like the sooner you can just learn from it, move on, and get ready for the next thing, it does help. What
You know, like
like go ahead.
no, yeah. So I mean, it's definitely it's easier for me now than it used to be. Like or in my early years, you know, of racing, it was way more frustrating. Early years of pro racing because I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the background, I didn't know what to do. I'm still learning all those things. So those bad days were like worse. You know what I mean? Because when you go home and you can't figure out what you're doing wrong, like that's when the real questioning comes in. Like what am I doing wrong? Like how do you figure that out? How do you figure out a bad result from a weekend or whatever? You know that's. But you know as you get older and you figure you know age comes into play and some of that stuff you figure that stuff out and you kind of know your strengths and weaknesses and work through that stuff.
So basically, you've already had plenty of bad days, so you know how to handle
I mean, I've had quite a few, so yeah, I've had my fair share.
No, I get it. But with age comes perspective, right? And then I think
Yeah,
also with family comes another layer of perspective. And you have kids, you have a
yeah,
wife, and like, it's funny because like, your kids, they don't really care. Like, yeah, your kids are psyched to go on the podium with you, but they really don't care they're not the age where they care one way or the other if you win or you get last. They're just like, okay, let's go play in the mud, right? And I think that's a good perspective to have, like, particularly when you can get in that cycle of just like feeling sorry for yourself. This went bad, this went bad, this went bad. Like, no, no, let's just,
well, I mean, you know, we could do everything right for 2 months. You know, everything be on point, perfect. You can be in the best fitness of your life. Everything, but none of that matters when you go to the race. Everything else has to like everything's just got to go in order. You know, the racing still has to happen for all of that to but it all has to tie together. You know, so it's just so there's just so many factors. You know, in this kind of racing that matters.
sure.
And some people overlook it, but you can't. I mean, it kind of goes both ways. Like it's good to overlook and good not to think about it, but at the same time, you have to think about it and you have to try to cover all the things that you can cover on your end because at the end of the day, you know, you and your crew is the only ones looking out for you. I mean, that's at the end of the day.
Yes. Very, very true. Maybe some hidden messages in there too. But no, for sure. Like yeah, 100%. So let me ask you this then. you've been at this. I'm not. I'm going to quit saying you've been at this for a while. Um, but
It's all good. Call it what it is.
but I mean, you won a championship. You won races. You're always a podium guy. Even aside from that, like it's a big deal to make a living as a professional athlete for extended amount of time. I don't care if you're a runner, if you're a triathlete, if you're a bodybuilder. To you're looking at probably what, 10 plus years. You've been a professional
Yeah.
athlete. That's no small feat. But you're also on the back end of that. So whenever you step away from this, like what do you want? Do you ever think about like your legacy and like how you want to be thought of, or or how you want to be thought of now?
Not really. Like that's one thing that I don't really ever care about per se, and maybe that's what keeps me kind of like how I am. Like, I'm happy to keep doing it. I wouldn't have thought I'd still be doing it at this point, but it just kind of keeps rolling on, and I still enjoy it. So, if it was miserable to me right now, I wouldn't be here. I'd already quit and did something else. But as far as legacy, I mean, I don't. It's I would say it's not really about those things to me. As long as as long as I'm having a good time and my family's been supported, and we can look back and just think, hey, those were really memorable years, and we had a really good time, and you know, it's still a short time, even though it's been my let's see, this would be my 13th year as a pro racer. So I mean, yeah, that's a long career and a long time, but I mean, I can still go back and tell you each year, like, oh, well, this happened that year, that happened,
Yeah.
and that'll be kind of forever. You can always say, what if that year, what if this year, you could change stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, we got the championship. I would say is obviously the biggest thing. In 22, that's always been the goal, and to be able to actually get it done was that topped it for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, not only got it done, but got it done a couple races early, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was so blessed to be able to be in the position at that year, to be consistent all year and not have those bad races like we talked about, and have, you know, good good bike, and everything was just gelling, and sometimes, you get that momentum rolling, it's kind of hard to stop. And it's like it was just like the year to
Yeah,
be. I don't know if that
yeah,
makes sense, but and got toward the end of the year, and not having to go down to like a last race and you know do or die moment, like that's kind of the way I am anyways. So like that was awesome. It was pretty
yeah,
cool.
for sure. Yeah. So I'll ask you one more question, and you may not want to answer this because I look at the data, I look at the numbers, and like I don't see the end, right? Like I, I look at things. I think you can ride. I think you race for many more years. Like knock on wood. But my question is about if you had advice to give like a younger yourself when you were 20, when you were 21, like, which maybe you don't want to give because some of these kids are coming for you, right?
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Hey, I do. I will say this. This is a true statement. Like I remember when I was younger and coming up, where a lot of these guys are at now. Nick and Grant and they're all the same age. It's like I remember everybody saying like, oh, the older guys at that time, like they feel so threatened by you, but like I see it now. Like I mean, they're like hunting on the doorstep, every weekend, and uh, but yeah, it's if I was like trying to give advice to myself, as an early career, it's like I wouldn't have listened. Probably number one, even if it's my own self. But I would say like don't change who you are and what you do. You know what I mean? Like that's kept. If I let's just say like as serious as I've been taking it the past 5-6 years, like if I was doing that my whole career, I still wouldn't be racing right now. I'd have been burnt out. So I mean, like to be able to keep it fun enough, long enough in my career, and through bad years when I wanted to quit, like I mean, we kind of stuck it out, and and came back, and it was, but I don't know that I could do it for an extended period of time because it's just so much more, like, it's way more taxing now. Not because I'm old, but definitely one of the factors. But it's way more taxing just on the endurance side and the training and the trying to keep that, like you said earlier, 365-day a year job going. Like, it's hard. You know what I mean? It's hard on you and hard on your body, and to expect your body to do that for, you know, 15, 20 years, like, it's probably not going to happen. And especially in your mental space, you get to a certain point, it's like, why are you doing this? You could definitely go do other jobs, whatever. So,
Yeah. Have fun and don't lose yourself along the way, huh?
yeah.
Gotcha. Well, cool, dude. Well, it's late for me. It's not quite as late for you, but I'm sure you have some kids to get to bed. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, it's been good. So we'll just keep on after it and have a good time.
Awesome, man. Thank you.